It's time for the Phil Ferguson Show.
This is Phil Ferguson, and you are listening to the Phil Ferguson Show. It is late summer 2020. Finally, I think we have here in the Chicago metropolitan suburban area a break from the heat. We were having days in the low to mid 90s with heat indexes pushing close to 100. And I know for some of you that would be a big improvement to much lower temperature. But for us, it's pretty darn hot, and I've had about enough of it. So I'm very excited. I'm also trying to fight off seasonal allergies. I'm guessing ragweed. I have taken almost every different medicine that I know of for allergies in the past, and generally they don't do a fucking thing for me, except for make me want to go to sleep. And it's funny because even the ones that say will not cause drowsiness, they're full of shit. Because when I take it, I'm drowsy and I can't be productive. So the only thing that I've found successful is filtration. And this is where I should have a sponsor paying me to segue into how great their filters are. So if you work for one of those companies and want to throw a pile of money at me, let me know. But I have an air filter in my office, and this is not a little one, it's a big one. It's off now because it would be really annoying for the recording. I have one by my bed. I have one in the basement, which is actually good for stirring air in the basement, and the filters actually can pick up some mold spores so you don't get mold and stuff in the corners of your basement. So that's kind of cool. And of course, our entire house system for the furnace and air conditioner has one of those big fat 4-inch pleated filters that I have to change every 3 months. And generally, that is better for me than getting shots. And the filters actually cost less than the shots, and I don't have to go and get the shots. And of course, if you can make one less trip to a medical facility at this point in time, and avoid other humans that might have COVID, all the better. So, that's kind of my solution. But this year, it's just not cutting it. It's just not quite enough. And maybe it's because I've been outside too much. I don't know. Just trying to go out and get some exercise. And of course, then I get exposed to pollen. But you're not here for that. You're here for the exciting stuff. And later on in this show, we are going to have an interview with the executive director of the SSA, Kevin Bolling. And we are also going to have our Investing Skeptically segment on the Polaris Plan. And we're now up to part 4, and that's on U.S. stocks, the U.S. market matrix that I call it. So we're not going to go over that now. You'll talk about that later, and you'll hear from Kevin and the SSA and all the cool things they're doing. So, of course, you're going to love that. One of the things I do want to cover that's very time-specific, calendar-specific, lately, and not unreasonably so, but lately, I've had quite a few people ask, this includes clients and non-clients, who are calling and they're a little, let's say, they're freaked the fuck out about the stock market. And I can appreciate that. Honestly, I do, because it seems like at this point where, again, August 2020, almost September of 2020, probably by the time you hear this, the whole world seems like it's going to hell. Trump is still president. He might win again. I'm hoping not. I'm optimistic not. The pandemic, coronavirus, unemployment, all this stuff, and the stock market keeps going up. And you could look at that and think, wow, the stock market doesn't seem connected to the reality and the suffering on the ground. Well, that is clearly true. Does it need to be? Must it be? Will it be? Should it be? I don't know the answers to that. The thing that I know is that I also had people worried and wanting to sell stocks in March, and the week before, March 20th particularly was the worst, where the U.S. market was down from its peak in February, I don't know, 25, 30, 35%. And I did get calls, people wanting to sell. Thankfully, we were able to breathe through it. And when the market rallied right back, everybody cheered and they were happy because they got all their money back. And now it seems like, okay, it came back, which is cool, but maybe it came back too much. And now it's up. And depending on which part of the market you look at, I think I was looking at the large cap growth earlier today. And you're not going to believe this, but it's up 31% year to date. Just a quick warning, this will differ from the numbers later in the segment, because in the segment I talk about the last 12 months. The number I just gave you is for the last 8 months. It matters exactly the time frame you're looking at, so you have to be careful comparing apples to apples. But needless to say, the large cap growth is crushing it. Matter of fact, the NASDAQ, the high-tech stocks are crushing it. And some stocks, like my one of my favorites, I guess, with air quotes, Tesla, is something like $2,000 a share. And a couple of years ago, I said 350 was too high. So what the fuck do I know, right? So take that with a grain of salt. But is the market too high right now? Who knows? Who knows? It's one of those things that as long as people want to buy stocks are going to go up. It's a really simple supply and demand thing. And so my thought on this is I'm going to break it up into two sections. If you are 15 or more years from retirement, so assuming some quasi-normal retirement age of 65, if you're 50 or younger, unless you're 50 and you're almost ready, but if you're 15 years or more from retirement, just keep on keeping on. Just add money to the stock market, add money to the stock market, add money to the stock market. When? Today. When would be better? Yesterday. Even better? Last year. But you can't do that. Unless you have a hot tub time machine, then let me know. We need to talk. But just keep adding money. If the market falls like it did in 08, 35, 40%, one can expect, one can hope, this is where I'm actually literally betting my life savings on, it will come back. Because every time in the past when the market has fallen, it has come back. For 200 years in the United States, this has worked. Maybe the next time is different, but, if it all goes to hell in a handbasket, it probably doesn't matter where the fuck your money is, because it all went to hell. But assuming some kind of normality, it will drop, it will come back. It will give you maybe a few years to invest even more money while the market's on sale. So it's not even really bad. And the younger you are, the less bad that is. Because if you're in your 20s and you finally have a decent job and you're finally making money and you can start saving 20% of your money, if the market falls by half and stays down for a decade, best thing ever that could happen in your life is that the market went to shit and stayed there for years while you keep plowing in money. So you don't worry about it. 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, you don't worry about it. 40-year-olds, worry about it a little bit. 50-year-olds, okay, start thinking about it. Now, if you're 15 years out from retirement or less, you should think about it. And it's not something that we're going to change the system, the Polaris Plan, the Phil's system, but you want to make sure that you are actually following the system. And if you don't like the system, then fine, do your own thing. Nobody's forcing you to follow my plan. But the plan does have some flexibility and some adjustments. As an example, historically, I recommend that the cushion is big enough for 10 to 12 years. I'm not going to go into the explanation of how the years are calculated here. It's in other segments, but 10 to 12 years. 2 years ago, I changed it to from 10 to 12 to 11 to 13. A year and a half ago now, I changed it to 10 to 12, 11, 12 to 14 years. And a year ago, I suggested that you should be 100% prepared 5 years before retirement. So these are the adjustments I've made in the plan to make it more conservative than it historically was, because the market has gone up now for like 11 years in a row. we've made a lot of money. There's still probably going to be a lot of money to be made. But if you're close to retirement, 5 years or less, you should be ready today. You should have your portfolio in such a way that the cushion is fully loaded. And the reason for that is that 5 years from retirement, if the cushion is fully loaded, if you're ready, you could retire today, you could retire in 5 years, you could retire in 7 years. If you're fully ready, it shouldn't matter if the stock market falls 50% because you have your cushion. You will get stock dividends. They may go down some. There's usually a lag, and they're already pretty low anyway. You're going to get your bond dividends, and you can sell stocks, or I'm sorry, you can sell bonds, and that's how we calculate how long the cushion would last. And if you were on the aggressive side of my range of 12 to 14 years, you can do that for 12 years. In the U.S., there has never been a period of time where the market went down and did not recover in 12 years. Matter of fact, the longest period is 7 years. That includes the dot-coms in 2000. That includes the Great Depression in 1929, 1930. Within 7 years, the stock market had fully recovered. Matter of fact, the worst double-barreled situation was 2000 and 2008. Now, the market had fully recovered by 2007, and you could have in 5, 6, and 7 partially refilled your cushion and then got whacked again in 08. So that's why the cushion is not 7 years, which would handle the single worst stock market drop on its own. But if you have 12 to 14, you could handle 2 of them. So if we have a situation where you have a 2000 and a 2008 again, I'm not predicting anything like that because I don't know the future. And part of, I think, the benefit of the plan is to accept what we do not know. We do not know the future. So we plan for everything all at once. And so you have stocks that will go up in the long run, and you have a cushion that's sufficient for almost anything the stock market can throw at you in the short run. Keep in mind that even if you have, let's say, a very conservative 50% of your money in the cushion, and just a quick caveat, that might be the right amount for you. It might be that 10% is the right amount for you, but just for the sake of argument, you have 50% of your retirement portfolio in the cushion. And let's say that's you have $1 million in total, 500,000 is in the cushion, 500,000 is in stocks. If the stock market falls by half, you would still likely see your overall portfolio reduced by $250,000, which it's one of these things, because I've done this long enough, sometimes you get to this point where someone who's made 50 or 80 or 100,000 or even more per year saves 10, hopefully 20% per year, and you just keep rocking along doing your thing. And at some point, it just smacks you upside the head, either because of a particularly good year or a particularly bad year, that suddenly you made more or lost more in the stock market than you earned from an entire year of labor. And that can freak people out a little bit. And what really freaks people out, and I had a few people that were on the ledge that we had to talk down in March, where in 2 or 3 weeks, they lost more than what they might have made or what they currently are making in a couple of years, which in a way is a really fucking awesome sign because your portfolio is now more important than your job. And the ultimate goal for me is to have a portfolio sufficiently large enough that if all you fuckers piss me off so much, I can just walk away and be done. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. I really kind of dig this job. But to me, being rich, my definition of rich is having enough money that if you choose to, you no longer need to work for the purpose of earning money. You can choose to work and earn money. You may actually fucking like working and earning money, but you don't have to. You could do something else. You could do anything else. You can retire and go work 5 hours a week at the local clinic petting kitties. and it doesn't pay a dime, but you enjoy it a lot, and it brings you zen. But you have that choice, having that availability, that flexibility of doing anything you want because you have enough money that you can do something and make nothing. You're no longer kind of a slave to the system. That to me is rich. And that amount might be, for some people, as low as $500,000. For some people, it's $1 million. For some people, it's $4 or $5 million. And of course, if you want to discuss how much that is, you can always email me, phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com. Please include your telephone number so I can call you and we can talk about that. But that's, for me, the definition of being rich. And so, again, it's really perfect that right now I'm in the middle of going over the different parts of the plan. And today's segment, I think, is part 4, the U.S. stock market mix. Follow the plan. If you don't like the plan, do your own plan. I don't care. But if you follow my plan, if you are 15 or more years from retirement, again, keep investing. The market may go up, the market may go down. If you're getting closer to retirement, you should start building the cushion. You should have some money in the cushion, some money that doesn't go up and down. If you're 5 years or less from retirement, you should be fully ready for retirement as far as your portfolio balance between stocks and bonds is concerned. It may not be big enough, but you want to have the balance right. If you're in retirement or past retirement, the balance definitely should be right now, and you should have enough in the cushion to go 12 or 14 years. If you're an aggressive type of person and you only want 10 years of cushion, cool. If you're just a little more freaked out than the average person and you want 15 years of cushion or something even bigger, that's fine too. We can talk about that. There's flexibility there. But don't worry about what's happening today. Don't buy today or sell today. And when you make adjustments, you make them for your own reasons. As an example, I'm going to pick on one of my clients in specific. He will know who he is, but I'm not going to tell you anything about him personally. Contacted me recently and said, Phil, I don't have anywhere near enough money in the cushion, blah, 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 blah. Went through all this stuff and his fears and concerns. Well, then I found out that due to some good things that have happened in his career and his life, he's probably going to retire within the next year. Now, I had him set down in my system to retire in like 8 years. So we weren't really quite ready in the cushion yet. And I said, well, we're going to agree on what we need to do. We're just going to disagree on the reasons, because he was freaked out about the stock market. I'm freaked out about the fact that he might retire in a year and the cushion's not ready because he's had some successes that are allowing him to retire sooner than he expected. So if there's a material change in your life, that would be a great time to examine your portfolio and think about it. Anyway, this segment was way longer than I expected. And the Polaris Plan Part 4 will be coming up after a quick break. And then we're going to talk to Kevin about the Secular Student Alliance. Longtime listeners know this is one of my top favorite organizations. I adore it. And you're going to hear about how you can donate some money and how you can cost me some money by forcing me to match what you give in the interview with Kevin. So quick break, and we'll go into more really cool and fun stuff.
My father, the man responsible for my education, taught me that Islam, rightly understood, is a religion and philosophy of peace. In fact, he said that for any society to be peaceful and prosperous, it had to institute the rule of God, or Sharia. I came to disagree with my father. It was a gradual process that started when I entered and lived in societies such as the Netherlands and the United States that applied man-made constitutions and laws. Both countries are peaceful and prosperous. I now disagree even more with my father that Islam is a religion of peace. When I look at the amount of security that is deployed tonight here, the amount of security that is deployed for the Richmond Marathon. 6 months ago, the Boston Marathon was bombed by two brothers who invoked the founding documents and the founding father of Islam. I disagree with my father when I look at the wanton killing of the Westgate Mall in Nairobi by Somali men invoking Allah and Muhammad to justify their horrid act. Kenya is the most hospitable country to Somalis fleeing their own country, so it distresses me even more. I disagree with my father when I look at the reports this week of 30 men and women worshipping in Iraq who are killed by a suicide bomber invoking the very same God and the very same prophet that they invoke. I disagree with my father when he says that Islam is a religion of peace. When I look at the 120,000 dead in Syria, Syria is now a stage of a proxy war between Islam's two most important and most influential nations, the Sunni Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Shia Islamic Republic of Iran. I disagree with my father that Islam is a religion of peace when I read about the almost daily reports of the destruction of churches, the pillaging of Christian property, the rape of Christian women, the terrible exodus of Christians and other religious minorities from Muslim countries. All this is done by men who invoke the founding father and founding documents of Islam. I disagree with my dear beloved father when I read about the teenage girl in Pakistan who's shot point blank in the head by a man invoking Allah and Muhammad because she wanted education. In the name of Allah and Muhammad, women are forbidden to drive. They're forbidden to own their own reproductive rights. They're forbidden to do anything unless they have permission from a male guardian. I disagree with my father that Islam is a religion of peace when I read these founding documents and I study the history and the example of the Prophet Muhammad. In there, I find an insistence of war and intolerance towards infidels, the hypocrites, those who associate God with others, homosexuals, women, and so on.
You're listening to The Phil Ferguson Show.
This Investing Skeptically segment is the Polaris Plan Part 4. And I think this is the one most people are the most desirous of, most expecting of. And this is about what I call the U.S. market matrix. And so it's a little thing that I've come up with over the years. And again, it is based on index funds, in this case, U.S. only stock index funds. And it's primarily based on Vanguard index funds. Now, I have been informed and I am aware that Fidelity has, I think, the same index funds. Other places may have them and I'm just not aware of it yet. So if you happen to know that, send me an email, of course, phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com. These 6 different index funds basically represent the entire United States stock market. So you could really get the same thing just investing in the total stock market index fund at Vanguard. But it wouldn't be exactly the same thing. And let me walk you through why. So the total stock market, if for example, you only had a few $1,000s, $5 or $10 or $20,000 that you wanted to invest, getting the total stock market index fund would be fine, because buying each one of these 6 funds requires a minimum of $3,000 to get into. And so, of course, you would need 18 to start, but then you couldn't adjust the ratios. The total stock market index includes these funds, but in a different ratio than what I might like or what you might like. As an example, right now in this late summer of 2020. This fund is basically a large cap fund. And what do I mean by that? Morningstar. I talk about Morningstar all the time, and you can go to morningstar.com and look for the Total Stock Market Index Fund, VTSAX. And if you go to the tab or the section that's about the portfolio and you look at the weighting of this fund, you will find that 76% of the investments in this fund are in large cap stocks. When large cap stocks go up, that's great. But 76%, three quarters, slightly more than three quarters, 15% is in mid cap, and only 5% is in small cap. I don't like that balance. That is out of order for the historical norms. And generally, large caps, I think of as 60 to 65% of the market. And that means the other 30, 35, 40% you're ignoring. So that's one of the reasons that if you only have 3,000 or 5,000 or 20,000, go ahead and put it in the total stock market index. Your big problem is not the exact growth rate or getting the best performance. Your big problem is you only have a few $1,000s and you need to add more money. But when you get a larger portfolio, I break it up into 6 funds, and I'm going to give you the list of 6 funds here. We're going to start with large cap. We have growth and value. The growth fund is VIGAX. The large value is VVIAX. And then we're going to go to mid cap growth and value. The mid cap growth is VMGMX. And the mid cap value is VMVAX. And then, of course, 2 more for the small cap. Small cap growth, VSGAX and VSIAX. And the reason I use these 6 funds is because of the processes. They're the ideas that I've talked about on the show many times. Granularity and clarity. And so you can clearly see how much of your money is in large cap growth stocks. Because one of the really nice things about these 6 funds is that they have no overlap at all. So a stock that is owned in the large cap growth fund will not be owned in the large cap value fund. It will not be in the mid cap growth fund. And this gives you the ability to see and control your diversification. Often I'll have people send me their portfolio. And of course, never do that just out of the blue. Make sure we've talked first. But they'll have, say, 7 different mutual funds, 7 different stock mutual funds. And one is growth, one is aggressive growth, one is growth blend, one is growth and income, one is diversified growth. All those words have no legal, statistical, mathematical meaning. They're marketing terms. Do you want a growth fund or do you want an aggressive growth fund? What is the difference? Just the title, what the fund may do behind the scenes, or what they're allowed to do with as defined in the prospectus, may not have any relationship to what the title is. So you can have 4 or 5, or in this case I mentioned 7 different stock funds, and think that you have 7 different types of stock funds. But if you take those funds and go to Morningstar.com, again, I love that website, and you can go research it. And one of the things you can see is the most heavily owned stocks. And you will go and look, and you will see that almost every one of those funds is probably going to have Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, Alphabet, which is Google, Berkshire Hathaway, because they're huge, Procter & Gamble, Visa, names that you know. And that's fine to own them, but they are in every one of your funds. So if the market turns against the segment that contains the largest, most growthiest stocks, if all of your funds are predominantly in those stocks, all those funds are going to get whacked at the same time. And so you're missing out on that diversification, because unknown to you, the 7 different U.S. stock funds that you think you have all have the same U.S. stocks in them. So they are correlated, and it takes away some of the ability for you to leverage the granularity and the clarity of knowing what you own. So as an example, again, this is the Vanguard Total Stock Market Index. And again, a great fund. Absolutely love this if you only have thousands of dollars, $5, $10, $20,000. If you're talking about more than $100,000, of course, you can split up and get different funds. But even in this fund, which is the entire United States stock market, I'm looking at the list of stocks that are in it and their percentage in the portfolio. Apple, 5.16%. So this fund owns every single stock, theoretically, in the United States of America, but 5% of that money is in one company. If something happens to that company, you're going to notice it. Microsoft, 4.83%. Amazon, 4%. Facebook, 2%. Alphabet / Google, almost 3% because it's got two different share class of stock. So you're highly, not leveraged, but you're highly invested in a handful of companies. And if the market changes somehow to adversely affect those companies, the effect on your investments could be greater than you thought. Of course, if they keep winning in perpetuity, then you win. You know, if you had put all of your money into the Vanguard Large Cap Growth Fund 10 years ago, you would have way more money than by putting it in any one of the other funds. But will the future be the same? Maybe it will. Odds are it will not. And this is one of the beautiful things about the fourth book in my list of books, Common Sense on Mutual Funds by John Bogle. It shows that there are long periods of time, maybe long, I guess is a bad word. There are periods of time, 3, 5, maybe even 10 years, maybe even 12 years, where certain parts of the U.S. stock market outperform other parts. For example, large cap growth may win for a considerable period of time, but then value outperforms for a decade. Maybe it's large cap for a while, and then it's small cap or mid cap for a while, or for 4 or 5 years, small cap value makes way more than growth did in the previous 5 or 10 years because small companies often have the opportunity to grow at a much quicker rate, because when you're already 4 or 5% of the U.S. stock market, where do you go from there? I guess you go from 5% to 10%, but that's huge. Some of these large companies are now so large that it's going to be harder for them to grow unless they consume other companies. And at some point, government officials might pull their heads out of their asses and decide to break some of them up. That's another topic for another show. But we have those 6 different funds. And right now, if you just bought the total stock market index, 76% of your money is going to be in large cap. That's higher than the historical norm, and it's higher than I want. And so now I'll give you the percentages of what I think you should use, something in this area. And this also brings up the reminder that you don't need to adjust this every day. You don't need to adjust this every month. Matter of fact, for most situations, looking at it once a year and pondering it is going to be sufficient. Of course, I might add to that the caveat that if the market suddenly falls 30% and suddenly goes back up 30%, that might also be a good time just to check to see where you are and how things have moved. So in the large cap growth, right now I'm doing 22%. 22% of all U.S. stock money is in the large cap growth. 28% is in large cap value. For mid cap growth and value, it's 10% in growth, 15% in value, and then the same thing in small cap growth and value, 10% in growth, 15% in value. And that gets you to a position where 1/2 of your money is in large cap and 1/2 is in mid cap and small cap, or often called the extended market, everything that's not in the S&P 500. So instead of having what I would call a historically neutral 60 to 65%, in large cap, or currently in the total stock market index, 76% of your money in large caps, I'm recommending about 50% in large caps. Now, if you get to the end of the year and you're off by 1% here, 1 or 2% there, you don't have to worry about it. Maybe you can adjust that by adding money, because if you are years out from retirement, this is a great time to be adding money. Always is a great time to be adding money. And you add to the positions that are in a percentage of the portfolio smaller than what you had intended. And it creates a systematic process where you are buying low. And then, of course, if you're in retirement taking money out, you take away from the biggest winners, you are selling high. And it's such an easy philosophy to hear and to understand. Of course, buy low and sell high. But how does one actually do that? This is one way that you do that. It's not something I created. It's called rebalancing. And so you have a definition of how much of your money you want in each position by percentage, and you readjust to that from time to time. It doesn't have to be that often. If there's a big market swing, that might be a time. But if things go along relatively calmly, once a year should be sufficient for most people. More often than that, you can create expenses and actually tax bills if you are in a taxable account. If the vast majority of your money is in a taxable account, maybe you can be a little slow to respond. So, you don't want to adjust if things are different by 1 or 2%. Maybe wait to 3 or 4%. Another reminder is that it's important to understand the tax consequences of making an adjustment, and you should at least know what the effect would be. But do not live your life by avoiding every and all tax. And I guess it makes sense you want to pay less tax than more tax, clearly. But if your portfolio is out of whack and you making an adjustment will create a capital gain, because hopefully you're doing this, only occasionally, and a year has passed, so your long-term tax gains, not short-term tax rates. And maybe your tax rate is going to be 15%. Fine. It's not going to be horrible. Maybe it's not something you necessarily want to pay. But as far as the long-term tax rates, you're probably not going to avoid them unless you die. So, first of all, if the money's in 401ks, IRAs, Roth IRAs, it won't matter. There's no tax consequences for adjustments. But in a taxable account, there probably will be, because you're going to revise down the biggest winners, keeping in mind that eventually you would have to pay that capital gains tax anyway, because at some point you're going to want to sell something and take some money out to live in retirement. Again, the only known way to avoid that completely is to die. If you're in a unique situation where you happen to know that you're going to die, and just get a little somber here for a minute, off topic a little bit, but if you have stage 4 lung cancer and your odds of making 5 years is small, you have no one else to give the money to other than your descendants, it might be reasonable to now not make an adjustment, not pay the taxes, because everything that's in a taxable account can go to your children, your dependents, your heirs, whoever it is that you want it to go, and they get what's called a step-up basis. And so they get to have all of those monies at that new higher price without paying taxes. Of course, there's the estate tax, which I think kicks in something like $10 million and above. So for most listeners, this is not going to be a problem. But that would be the only exception. So you want to do the adjustments, pay the taxes. You're going to pay them anyway at some point in the future. And I'm guessing at this point in time, and while these Polaris Plan segments are, general and not very time specific, it's not something about today, just my guess would be that tax rates in the future are going to be higher. And again, we can talk about that more in another segment. So the breakdown of those 6 funds, we had large cap growth and value, mid cap growth and value, small cap growth and value. I gave you the percentages, and I want to go over a little bit of why. Why all those different percentages, and what can you do with that? So if you are looking at your portfolio relatively recently, now I have the data here from June 30th of 2020, because I only update these numbers once a quarter, because I don't want to myself get sucked into these daily or weekly fluctuations and variations. I want to have only trend ideas, I guess, in where things are heading or where things did go. So if you are in retirement and you have these 6 U.S. funds, these that make up the U.S. market matrix that I call it, and you need to have a little bit more cash for your expenses over the next 6 to 12 months. Now, the question you might ask yourself is, where do I get that cash? Because you could sell bonds, but you don't normally ever want to sell bonds in retirement unless the stock market is down. So the question is the stock market up? Well, the amazing thing is that the total stock market as of June 30th for the last 12 months, the preceding 12 months, is actually up 6.5%. And probably most, if not all, of your bond funds did not make 6.5%. So if you only had the total stock market index fund and it was up 6.5%, if that's beating your bond funds, great. You can take money out of the total stock market where you just made 6.5%. However, if you have that granularity, you have extreme differences. As an example, in the preceding 12 months ending June 30th, the large cap growth fund is up 25%. At a time where people are freaking out about the market going down, this segment is up 25%. On the other extreme, the small cap value fund is down 16.5%. Again, this is information from Vanguard for the preceding 12 months ending June 30th of 2020. So if you're looking at this at any other date, you're going to get different numbers. But this is the thought process when you look at your portfolio and realize you need a little bit more cash because your cash buffer in retirement is now too small. Well, what do you want to sell from? A fund that's up 6.5%, a fund that's down 16.5%, or a fund that's up almost 25%? I want to skim the cream off the fund that's up 25%. Because I know, and again, I mentioned but got distracted, the Common Sense on Mutual Funds by John Bogle goes over the statistics of this, the history of these swings between growth and value, between large cap and small cap. And the funny thing is that up until just a few years ago, not every, I guess, don't want to get too hyperbolic, but many fund managers, many investors would tell you to put more money in value because value makes more money per year over time. And it did. Well, it doesn't anymore. Well, not if you look back for 10 years, not even if you look back for 20 years, because the last 10 years have been so good for growth. But what will the future hold? These things change. And there are long periods of time where value does better. And so since growth is doing so wonderful right now, don't double down on what's grown amazingly well. Benefit from it. If you're in retirement, sell from the large cap growth fund. If you don't want to take it all out of there, the next place maybe would be the mid cap growth fund, which is up 12%. But because of this granularity and the fact that you can clearly see, that's the clarity, what you own in which parts of the U.S. stock market, you can pick and choose. And so you actually can have, and this has happened in the past, you can have situations where the total U.S. stock market is down, maybe only down 5 or 10%, but one or more of these segments might be up. So you can still take out money that has gone up. You can take out profits in retirement from stocks even while the entire stock market is down. Just something to keep in mind. If all stock market segments are down, domestic and international, real estate, if everything you own is down, then you go and look at the bonds. And maybe the bonds didn't do that well either. But maybe one of them is up 1 or 2%. Maybe your absolute best bond fund is only down 1% and other bond funds are down 3 or 4%. Fine. Take out of the one that's down the least. And again, systematically, this is you selling high. You're selling the best thing to create cash for retirement. Now, if you are investing right now, I want to add money to small cap value and mid cap value because they've underperformed. And I know in the long run, from the historical data, and maybe the future doesn't go like the historical data did, the future suggests, or the historical data suggests that in the future, at some point, there will be a readjustment and the pendulum will swing the other way and large cap growth will not be the dominant force that it is today, and that small caps, mid caps, value stocks in general will do better. So we're not putting all the eggs in any one of those baskets. We're making adjustments. So we're not 75 or 76% in large cap. We're 50%. So it's still half of all the U.S. stock market. It's just a little more controlled. So that's some thoughts about that part of the Polaris Plan Part 4, the U.S. market matrix, the 6 funds, and my current thoughts on the percentage allocations in those 6 funds. And of course, that's only the sub part of your portfolio, that's the U.S. market, and how you break that up. If you have questions or want to have a discussion about it with me, of course, you can send me an email, phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com. Please do include your telephone number because often there's enough details and things that we need to discuss that just going back by email might lead to, confusion on my part. I'll just say that misinformation. I do much better by voice than by writing. Probably because I suck as a writer, but that's just me. So anyway, that's Polaris Plan Part 4. The Phil Ferguson Show is for educational purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be interpreted as personalized investment advice. Your investments should be based on your situation, and you should consult with your financial advisor before taking any action. The show may contain ads. These ads are placed into the show by the hosting company after I finish recording and editing. I have little control over the content of the ads, and you should not assume that I support their products or claims. If you choose to support the show via the new Patreon page, that support does not create an advisor-client relationship.
Reverend Mesa, Reverend Rock, I'm grateful for your generous invitation to state my views. While the so-called religious issue is necessarily and properly the chief topic here tonight, I want to emphasize from the outset that I believe that we have far more critical issues in the 1960 campaign. The spread of communist influence until it now festers only 90 miles from the coast of Florida. The humiliating treatment of our president and vice president by those who no longer respect our power. The hungry children I saw in West Virginia. The old people who cannot pay their doctor's bills. The families forced to give up their farms. An America with too many slums, with too few schools, and too late to the moon and outer space. These are the real issues which should decide this campaign. And they are not religious issues. For war and hunger and ignorance and despair, no religious barrier. But because I am a Catholic, and no Catholic has ever been elected president, the real issues in this campaign have been obscured, perhaps deliberately, in some quarters less responsible than this. So it is apparently necessary for me to state once again, not what kind of church I believe in, for that should be important only to me, but what kind of America I believe in. I believe in an America where the separation of church and state is absolute, where no Catholic prelate would tell the president, should he be Catholic, how to act, and no Protestant minister would tell his parishioners for whom to vote, where no church or church school is granted any public funds or political preference, and where no man is denied public office merely because his religion differs from the president who might appoint him or the people who might elect him. I believe in an America that is officially neither Catholic, Protestant, nor Jewish, where no public official either requests or accepts instructions on public policy from the Pope, the National Council of Churches, or any other ecclesiastical source, where no religious body seeks to impose its will, directly or indirectly, upon the general populace or the public acts of its officials, and where religious liberty is so indivisible that an act against one church is treated as an act against all. For while this year it may be a Catholic against whom the finger of suspicion is pointed, in other years it has been, and may someday be again, a Jew, or a Quaker, or a Unitarian, or a Baptist. It was Virginia's harassment of Baptist preachers, for example, that led to Jefferson's Statute of Religious Freedom. Today I may be the victim, but tomorrow it may be you, until the whole fabric of our harmonious society is ripped apart at a time of great national peril. Finally, I believe in an America where religious intolerance will someday end, where all men and all churches are treated as equals, where every man has the same right to attend or not to attend the church of his choice, where there is no Catholic vote, no anti-Catholic vote, no block voting of any kind, and where Catholics, Protestants, and Jews, at both the lay and the pastoral levels, will refrain from those attitudes of disdain and division which have so often marred their works in the past, and promote instead the American ideal of brotherhood. That is the kind of America in which I believe.
You're listening to The Bill Ferguson Show.
Next up, we have Kevin Bolling. He is, I think, an executive director, chief guru, whatever title we're going to have here at the Secular Student Alliance. How are you, Kevin?
I'm doing well, Phil. It's good to talk with you again. And yes, the executive director.
Yeah, I thought that was it. But, of course, as soon as I start talking, my mind just melts and I forget what I was gonna say. But you're here to help me out. And you are based in, and SSA is now based in California somewhere?
In the Los Angeles area, that's correct.
Yeah. Now, kind of some current events, so hopefully people that hear the show months later will understand. You guys have had a little bit of a heat wave there. Has that affected you?
Well, we have. I mean, it's a little typical for Southern California to sort of spike every once in a while in the weeks. But yes, I think we were at 108 yesterday, which of course gets the forest fires going. Not around us, but the state is having problems with that. So yeah, we're a little bit used to it. We like it when the temperatures are a little bit more mild, and of course we get those cool nights where we can open the windows and enjoy that for sleeping weather. Not this week, however. So hopefully next week we'll return to some more decent weather.
Yeah, so I was just reading a story about the triple threat to California because you've had some extreme heat. I think Death Valley set a new all-time world record, something like 130. That seems warm.
It's 130 degrees. So I think they're in the process of verifying that that's actually like all-time new world record for hottest place on Earth. Don't
worry, they'll beat it soon enough. But that's in the shade. Like it matters. I mean, I think the hottest I've ever had was like 113 in Vegas. And it's one of those things that from the Midwest, you're always hoping for a breeze. When it's 113 and 5% humidity, even with a breeze, it doesn't help. It doesn't. It just sucks water out of your skin even faster.
Yes, I was in Arizona, and I think we hit 100. Well, I think it was around the 112, 113 mark. And when I was younger, my family, my father in the military, so we lived in Spain, in southern Spain, for 4 years.
Nice.
And our first year there, we were playing soccer with the summer league, and the actual temperature was 116.
Wow. And of course, so you have some fires, thankfully none near you. You have this crazy heat stuff. And, of course, now we have continuing COVID because I know the SSA is not a political organization. So just make sure everyone understands that this is Phil's opinions. Trump is a callous sociopath and a part of the problem, not part of the solution. But I can only wonder what happens. It clearly COVID affects the breathing ability of people, and you add smoke on top of that and extreme heat, and at least for us in the Midwest here, allergens, ragweed is picked up, and I'm feeling that. But gosh, a lot of fun and exciting things going on.
Yeah, so unfortunately, California had sort of a late and continuous spike of the coronavirus. Even though I think we were one of the first states to shut down, mask orders and those sorts of things. But unfortunately, the virus just crept up on us, and we're fortunately now seeing rates coming down and those sorts of things. But I think the state in itself has done a lot of smart things in helping with the prevent COVID spread, unlike our president. So I just wish you'd listen to more of the scientists and
absolutely
put those things into policy.
It's not a brand new thing for science to become politicized, and that breaks my heart. But that actually goes to the very core and the reason for Secular Student Alliance. Why don't you tell us about the history? And apparently it's the 20-year anniversary, or it just started being the 20-year anniversary. Tell us about the history.
Sure. Yeah, the organization officially it started as a student organization in Ohio State, and it was sort of officially started in 2000, and so 2020 is our 20th anniversary, and so we'll sort of be kicking that off right towards the end of the year. Honestly, we had plans to do it a little bit earlier, but COVID got in the way of that. It's great. We always say, we're 20 years old. Next year we're legal, so it's great. I think the organization, starting from a single sort of group, student group at Ohio State University, August Brunsman, who really had support from was involved in and had support from the larger secular community, was really able to sort of solidify that and really grow the organization into, nationwide. So we're continuing that legacy. We have continued to grow, and more students. We're really proud. We've seen a lot of our students involved in many of the secular organizations in volunteer positions or leadership positions. So that's fantastic to see. So we know we've made a difference there, and then we watch what our student leaders, after they graduate, what they go on to do in the rest of the world in their real lives. And being involved in all sorts of issues that we think are really making the world a better place and our nation a better place for everybody, and so we're happy to see that. And so we look at the 20 years as a start. We look for the sort of the next 20 years and beyond.
And I just realized that I didn't do a disclosure thing. I want to make sure everybody understands my interests or conflicts with an organization. I was on the board of directors twice for the Secular Student Alliance. The first time, I think it was almost 3 years, and the second time, almost 2 years. So I've had that involvement, and of course, donated money in the past. And we're going to do that again. And I think what you were talking about, and the fact with COVID that this may actually be more necessary than before, because it helps students who have the non-conventional view of Christianity in the United States, but who accept reality a little bit better and make their decisions based on reason and science, can sometimes feel a little isolated. And I know many people feel isolated with COVID. And so these groups are even more important. Does that make sense? Does that sound right to you?
Oh, definitely. And I think back in March, when it was really within a week that COVID sort of hit, and schools and college universities really knew, okay, we need to close. And so for us, and for our students, it was very quick change. And our students have been on their campus, and they've developed this community and this family and support network where they feel comfortable and are supported and with like-minded people, and are able to be open and sort of live out their secular values. And within a very short, abrupt period of time, many of our students, returning back to their homes and communities, and oftentimes are not accepting places of their non-belief. We know that only about 13% of our students come from secular families, and so there's a large portion of our students are from religious families. So that's, I think, with that, dealing on top of the uncertainty of how my class is going to be and leaving all my friends and that sort of abrupt nature. So we really saw that and really did things to just sort of bring our students together, allow them to talk, because they lost their community, so trying to build that virtually. And now we're going into sort of the new fall year, and we've already seen sort of that uncertainty and I think sense of loss of wanting to go back to school, and some of the universities quickly opening and then quickly closing again, and still our students being sort of stuck in places where they can't be open, where they don't have that network and support with them personally, and so we are trying to provide that in some cases virtually as much as we can, and doing that outreach. So for us in the upcoming school year, we have chapters on campus who are there, and so that's our traditional model, and how 6 months ago we were built to run, and then we quickly went to chapters virtually, and we quickly changed all of our programming and provided programming for that. And very quickly, as we were on that process, and especially for the upcoming year, we realized that we're going to have individual students who may be on a campus and not have a community because of social distancing or those sorts of things, or we have students who are just isolated in their communities without a social network. And so we're really looking at this upcoming year to four-prong approach. Our traditional model with chapters on campus, our sort of new reality with chapters virtually, and really making sure that we're supporting students individually, whether they're on a campus and don't have a network or an SSA, and students who are at home or not able to be on a campus with a support system. So, yeah, we're making sure that we're doing everything we can for our students and providing that support and that networking and resources and something fun to do, and a chance to sort of connect with other people, because they many times don't have that now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to tease the donations once again, and we're going to talk more about that in detail. But for my listeners, it won't surprise you, but there's going to be a match. But before we dig into the details of that, of course, we want to talk about in a regular year, how many students are affected positively? How many students get some involvement because of the SSA?
We have traditionally we have about 300 chapters across the country. So the majority of those are in college and universities. We do have high school chapters. And then over the last year, we actually saw an increase in interest in middle schools. And clearly that's a more difficult process for students to start. And we were actually probably right before COVID happened, we probably had about 5 middle schools that were in the process of trying to organize and those sorts of things. So we're definitely seeing that growth. And chapters can vary. So a chapter can be as, in a newly formed chapter can be as small as 5, 6, 7 students. And typically during their first time of being able to go on table, we've often had students like, it was our first day and we have 25 new members. So being on with we provide lots of free supplies, so they're able to get the word out and educate people that they're there and sort of spread the information. So that's something that definitely helps. And some of our larger chapters, one of our chapters in Utah is 150 members. So there's, depending on where they are and the size and how new or established they are, there's the size of the organization can vary, but spread across the United States and serving as many students as we can.
Absolutely. And if a student is listening to this and says, "Hey, I want that at my school," what do they do next?
I think one of the easiest things to do is go to our website, so secularstudents.org, and we have clearly they can go on and find out information about the organization, what we stand for. There's a place for joining, so you can join as a member. All of our student memberships are free, and everything we provide to the students is free for them as far as resources. So clicking on join, they can join as a student member, and one of our staff reaches out to them, to check in, see how they're doing, see what their interest is. They can also go to student chapters, which is another tab on our website. They can find a chapter, which pulls up a map, and they can sort by states and school and see what we have available, where we have chapters. And under that tab is also start a chapter. So they click on start a chapter, fill out that information, and generally within 24 hours, one of our staff will reach out and, again, sort of have that conversation, see what they want to do. And so if we have some other students who are interested, oftentimes we can pair those students up and those sorts of things. So
yeah,
we try to make that as easy as possible. And when a student says, I want to start a chapter, we have what we call a starter kit that goes out, and sort of sample constitution and sign-up lists and all sorts of publicity and posters that hang on campus. And then we even go in the background and do some promoted social media posts for that campus to sort of bring up the interest and let people know that that's there and those sorts of things. So, again, we try to do everything we can to support the students on their campuses. Absolutely.
So if you're a student going to any university, high school, even a few junior highs, maybe not today, but soon, go on the SSA website. That's secularstudents.org. And, of course, as Kevin just said, you can go find the map and see if your school already has a group. And then maybe you can join and help out, help someone else, and maybe get a little companionship, friendship, acquaintances, make lifelong friends, the typical college stuff. And, of course, if there's not a group at your university, contact the SSA, learn more to see if you can start one. And it might be a little rough. And I think this is part of the motivation for this fundraiser that I'm going to do right now, because SSA is probably more needed than ever, not just because of COVID, but because of religion and intolerance and the political climate. It is really necessary, and the students just don't have the money. Matter of fact, a lot of them are going to have huge bills. So those people who listen to this podcast, maybe some of them have some money and can go donate and help build a stronger secular future with more students getting into the working world that have experience in leadership and team building and organizing events, things that are going to help them be more successful in the future. Does that all make sense, Kevin?
Definitely.
Well, good. I didn't expect such a short answer from you, but excellent. I'm delighted that works.
And I think one of the things that we're continuing to see grow, and I think, fortunately, we have great partners within the secular community with the other organizations, and it's something, is really the Christian nationalism that is targeting schools intentionally, and to really sort of advance Project Blitz and those other things that are going through. And our students, really are on the front line of that, especially in the college and university setting, of the rules and the things that the lawsuits that they're trying to change to promote religious freedoms, which is really religious discrimination on college campuses. And so our students are out there protesting and running for student government and winning student government, and they're at their state capitals, talking about the bills. We have Christian groups that are being funded to sue universities so that religious groups can put statements of faith. So basically, I get to discriminate about who comes into my organization.
Right.
And they're actually saying that, the secular student organizations are doing that too. And our students go to their campus and go, that is not true. You have a copy of our Constitution that says everyone is invited, and we have religious members in our groups, and we welcome them because we like the conversations and the discussions, and we do interfaith work. So this is not true. They are lying to you, and they are trying to discriminate, and we will not stand for that. So our students are very active in combating this sort of continued rise in Christian nationalism that we see on college campuses.
I love it. And you perfectly segued right into one of my next topics, is this idea that each individual group is open to all students. You don't have to declare you're an atheist. You can be an agnostic, and we can argue about splitting that hair, but whatever label you want to use, humanist, pantheist, whatever get you through the day, but you want some students that generally promote a realistic, a scientific worldview, and that we solve our problems with reason, with science, with trying to figure out what is really going on in the world, not giving up and forming a prayer circle and hoping that things get better.
Definitely so. And so we often talk about our students, they're going to graduate. We're putting, leadership skills, and you sort of mentioned, event planning, leadership skills, rational thought, how to work with groups of people. And then one of our goals is also to sort of ignite that activism in them. We want them to change their communities and their schools to make them better for everybody. And so we look at these are future business leaders, future politicians, future secular leaders, and so we are sort of building a foundation and investing in a future that we want to see in the United States.
The other thing I noticed from the website, now I already knew about this, but it's still on the website. It's very cool. You, of course, had a conference planned this year in 2020, which you couldn't hold in person, but the list of speakers and the videos that are available on the website are truly staggering. Walk us through how that all got pulled together and how well it went.
So each summer we put on a conference, and it's really more designed for our student leaders. But everyone is always welcome to our conference every year. It's great when a lot of our sort of donors and supporters come, and we're depending on where we are. We also intentionally invite a lot of the local atheist, humanist, free thought groups to come. One, they get to meet the students, they get to understand them better, and we offer a wide variety of sessions. So some are a little bit more targeted towards students in their campuses, but really we tried to do things, have sessions on the sort of the national secular level. This past summer we were scheduled to be in Washington, D.C., and we were going to have our conference on the weekend, as we traditionally do, and we had worked with the Secular Coalition of America, and we're actually going to have a secular student lobby day on the following Monday, where the students were going to pick some of the topics that they wanted to talk to their elected officials about. SCA was going to come in and do the training, and the students would have appointments with their elected officials and be able to do actual lobbying in D.C. So we're really, and just with the election year and everything, we're super excited about that. That all changed, clearly. So we quickly transitioned to a virtual conference, and we're, super pleased with what we were able to offer. So, Angela Saini talking about race, gender, and power from her home in London, and Catherine Stewart talking about religious nationalism, Anthony Pinn, just some fans, Gary Leland from Humanist International, of course, Andrew Seidel. So really some great speakers that we were pleased to have who were able to talk. Rachel Lasser with America's United. So since we went live, or since we went virtual, we recorded everything. And so on our conference schedule, we listed all of the recorded videos so people can go and watch on demand and be able to still participate. So we've intentionally left the link up so that people can participate in the conference and by watching the videos.
Yeah, and of course, you rattle off a bunch of names, and you just scratched the surface. This is absolutely amazing, and all these links to watch the video on demand. So anyone who's listening, student or not, if you are looking for a little something to keep you busy, or you're feeling the need for a little rational thought, you can go check out the secularstudents.org website and follow the conference link and go watch some nice presentations there. They're all there. And let's segue, not so smoothly on my part, but to the money, right? Everything kind of comes down to money. And I think maybe it was 2 years ago, we did something like this, and we're going to do something similar. So I'm going to walk the listeners through the rules. And if I say anything wrong, Kevin, correct me, jump in, whatever. But there is a specific link that's going to be available, and that's secularstudents.org/Phil. Is it that easy? Yes, there it is.
It is.
Yep. I'm looking at it now. We've got a little work to do, but by the time this goes live, I think it's going to be all ready. And we're essentially going to ask people to contribute monthly. And the reason for this is that a one-time donation, whatever that amount is always appreciated. And anyone can, of course, still do that. The focus of this is monthly because it smooths out the revenue stream for the organization. The organization can count on what's coming in each month and start to make longer-term plans knowing that that money is coming in. Does that sound right? Am I making sense?
Very accurate. Yes.
Excellent. So as soon as this gets turned on, what we're going to do is people can go to this link, again, secularstudents.org/Phil, and sign up for some kind of monthly contribution and give what you can. Give till it feels good, right? Kind of thing. But that I'm going to count, or you're going to count for me and give me a number, the total dollars contributed in September, October, and November. So I'm not going to count everything that everybody gives for the entire year. Plus, we don't want to wait for the match for the entire year. But everything given through monthly contributions, September, October, November, I will match that up to $10,000. So we're hoping, as it cleverly says on the website, and this little fact escaped me until I went and reviewed it myself, we're talking about at least $20,000 for the 20th anniversary. How's that sound?
Exactly.
And we're not even excluding people that are currently giving, because a lot of people did this last time we did this. If you are already a contributor, those funds don't count, and we are very thankful that you keep giving. But if you want to up your donations, say you're giving 10 a month and you want to go to 20, that extra 10 counts, and it's going to count for the first 3 months, $10, $20, $30, and then Phil's on the hook for another $30. So even if you're giving already, you can go give more. If you don't want to be tied down to some kind of monthly commitment and you just want to go and give $10,000, you are, of course, free and welcome and invited to do so. It just won't count towards this, because the purpose in my head, anyway, is to drive more and more people that have had success and opportunity laid upon them, and they're making good money, that you share a little bit of that love, not just in general, but specifically with students who might be struggling even more now than normal, so that the SSA can provide assistance and help, and like we talked about, leadership and training and all that stuff. Anything we need to correct there, Kevin? Does that all sound good?
I think you hit on the nail, and we did, as you mentioned, we did this 2 years ago, and people were very generous and have stayed with us. So we are very thankful for those for our monthly donors and for those monthly donors who joined us during your match 2 years ago. So, and as you mentioned, we also had some people who came on and made some very nice, generous one-time donations as well. So all of that is wonderful, and that allows us to provide all the free services that we provide to our students.
And of course, I don't know that we talked about it. I think you mentioned it briefly, but there's a link to join for students. And of course, under that link, you can also join as a non-student, so you get more information. Is that the same thing as donating, or is that a different thing?
It's almost the same thing because of donation laws. In technical stuff in the background, donation, you get your standard donation letter at the end of the year. With a membership, there's a few things that we have to take out of the donation. So if you make a donation, then there's a bit of benefits that you get. So reduced price of the conference and those sorts of things. So you have to take that out, and then the rest of that money, which is still the majority of that money, is tax deductible. And so when we send your letter for memberships at the end of the year, we show you this much is the benefit. This is your donation amount, which is, again, still the majority of that, and that's your taxable donation. So slightly different. But when you do a membership, it does, what we use is that allows us to provide the free memberships for students.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And it's one of those things that for an organization to claim to be a charity and your contributions to be tax deductible, you're not supposed to get any tangible benefit. And I know that many years ago, and it's a story for another podcast, when I was on the board of a church school, they would actively encourage people to give money to the church, and then they would magically waive the tuition that you had to pay, so that the donation of, let's say, $5,000 was tax deductible, where tuition of $5,000 wasn't. Just, to me, another example of how religions and people, I guess in general, but religions don't make people any better. They just find ways to work the system and kind of cheat the tax man. Anyway, like I said, another show. What is coming up this fall for the Secular Student Alliance? We're talking about possibly not meeting. Are the students going to have online meetings? Is that something you've set up or you're working on now?
Our chapters, some of our chapters will continue to have been meeting online through the spring and the fall, and the summer, and will continue to meet in the fall. And so we provide, providing lots of information, resources, and information on how to do that, how to be effective at that. And we just, even with the start of the year, I think this week alone we've had 5 schools, 1 high school and 4 colleges, reach out about starting a chapter on their campus. And so we know that some schools aren't taking new student organizations now, so they will become an official chapter of the SSA at their particular school. And one of our requirements was that they had to be a registered student organization on their school as well. And because of the situation, we're going to waive that for this year. So they'll be with us, they'll be meeting on campus, whether they are in person or virtually, and being able to be a new student organization. So students are continuing to want to organize and be with other people and have that community and do things on their campus, and we're going to be here to support them. So we also have students who are going to, as I mentioned before, are going to be on a campus and not have an SSA and not have a way to start an organization, and we're going to be there to support that student. So we're having, we'll continue to have online meetings and events for them to participate sort of in the national SSA rather than the sort of the local SSA. And then when we're able to when they're able to start the chapter on the campus, we're going to be there for them to get that up and running and be able to do that. So we're looking at sort of a year of sort of building a little secular army, if you will, all across the United States. And then probably in fall of 21, when student organizations are really able to sort of get back to a little bit of normalcy, we really hope to just sort of flood the SSA with brand new chapters all across the country.
It's interesting. I was just thinking about myself and when I was in college. And of course, most people, and me included, meet so many wonderful friends in college, and you have so much opportunity to hang out and visit. And a lot of that's gone, at least in person. But I also know that there's a lot of really strong, dare I call them powerful, influential Christian organizations that send out students to convert and harass, intimidate other students, get them to join, get them to swear that they have allegiance to this version of Christianity. And I'm not going to mention all the group names. You and I probably know them all. But it's more important than ever that the Secular Student Alliance provides an option to students, a place where they can go, even if they just have questions. Because if you go to the Campus Crusade for Christ and say that you have questions about the Bible, questions about how this whole system doesn't really make sense, and how can I actually be in heaven if I know my friend's being burned in hell? If you have questions about that, Secular Student Alliance is a place you can go. Again, as we discussed, you don't have to be an atheist. All you have to do is be a nice person. And think that it's okay for everyone to be involved, and you can share some time together. And when the groups get to meet in person, sometimes it's in a local drinking establishment, following, of course, all legal rules with alcohol consumption. Maybe it's a pizza party. And I know previous events that I've been at, sometimes they have game nights and different activities. So it's involvement, it's outreach, and sometimes it's providing I guess, a safe place for someone who feels overwhelmed in a hyper-religious world, because Christians bat above their strength right now, their numbers, because they're organized. And so we're trying to equalize that and put secular students on an equal footing. But of course, Kevin, we don't need the budget numbers, although it's available on the website if someone digs for it. For the, what is it, $9.90? Is that what it's called?
It is.
What is the size of your budget compared to one of these big Christian organizations?
So I think the four largest Christian organizations, or campus ministries.
Yeah.
So Hillel, Newman, Cru, Campus Crusade for Christ, and Navigators. So, and they're not required, even though they're not, they're quote unquote nonprofits. They're not required to publish, but someone did some digging and looked at their annual reports and tried to figure out their annual budget. So the four largest combined came out to about $1 billion a year that they, and that's just four. I mean, there's numbers
right.
and large amount of Christian organizations on campus. And some of our campus organizations, there's one SSA and 120 religious organizations. So we're, there's a lot of competition, so to speak. And so we have a budget of, generally about $550,000, $600,000 a year with that. So that's, they have buildings and staff and people to go in and recruit and proselytize and all the things that they do. And ours are really, when you invest with us, it's going to the students, and the students are the ones making the decisions about what's happening on their campus and how they best fit the needs. And I think for many people who, growing up at when there wasn't an SSA, or when we weren't, as in many places we were, who sort of experienced that. And I know I think my first realization of sort of non-religion came in college, through experiences in college, when I was able to start questioning that. We know that's when a lot of students, are having that sort of experience and not having anyone. And that you sort of mentioned a little bit, that isolation and feeling alone and feeling like there aren't other people who think like you. The SSA provides that alternative to that, and provides that community, and provides that, there are people who think like me, and I can do stuff, and I have friends, and now I can put this into action and political action and activism on my campus and changing things. So really starts to turn that around. And so we're happy to be able to do that.
Yeah. I almost feel like I'm on PBS now, and I'm the one encouraging people to donate. I'm going to just recap once again: September, October, November of 2020. Whatever money you, the listener, gives via the monthly contributions, and that, of course, that our special link is secularstudents.org/Phil. We're hoping that you continue for the entire year or 2 years or 5 years, like we talked about. A lot of people that did this 2 years ago are still donating, and I thank you. It's important. But if it's new to you, go to that link, give what you can. And if you've already are given, you can up it and still get credit for the additional amounts. We want all of that. And September, October, November, whatever that total is, up to $10,000, I'm going to match that out of my pocket, out of my business's pocket, for $20,000 to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the Secular Student Alliance. So everyone who's listening can go do that. Kevin, I want to be respectful of your time. Is there any projects or things that you've got coming up that we've not covered that you want to make sure you get in before I rudely cut you off and move on with the rest of the show?
Right now, every summer, right before the fall, we have our scholarships going for secular student activists. And so we currently have that running. So in October, we do our announcements and just encourage people, if you're a donor, you'll get an email that describes our scholarship recipients. You can also go to our website and look at the past one. These students are amazing. So I always thought I was super busy as a student leader on my campus. And when I read what these students are doing, it puts me to shame, and I'm proud of that. So these are phenomenal students. And I think the other thing that's really great this year is we have a number of sort of local atheist, humanist, free thought groups. And one example is the Central Florida Free Thought Community, or the Florida Free Thought Association, who's been a sponsor of our local scholarship programs. And we now have a number in multiple states now of local groups who are doing that. So we're able to offer scholarships in specific states for students as well. So that's growing. So look for that announcement. Last year we had 1,300 students apply for the scholarship for 12 scholarships. So clearly a huge need. So that's going on. And then I just stay tuned. We've got some our focus really for the fall is going to, and this upcoming spring is supporting our students no matter where they are, and whether they're in a group or not. But we'll continue to offer programming and speakers and those sorts of things virtually. Of course, we invite, they're targeted to our students, but we definitely encourage and love the support and participation of the larger secular community. So always, everyone's invited.
It just popped into my head. If someone is listening and doesn't want to give monthly, but just wants to give something ridiculous like $100,000, do you have a way to manage that and set that aside and create a scholarship fund that they will know every year going forward X amount of dollars are going to help some student?
We definitely do. So, so yes, and that's something that's that if you want to go and donate and make an obscene amount, please go to our website, hit donate, and that can help you facilitate it. And there is a place where you can write notes. So if you do want it to go to something specific, we do, we honor those. And so we, in our accounting systems, they track that. And so we get audited on that. So when you give money to a specific area, that is where it is going. And if you want to do an endowment, you want to sponsor scholarships for years to come, please feel free to give me a call. My information's on the website. It's kevin.bolling@secularstudents.org. If you do SSA at secularstudents.org, I will also get that. But yes, we're happy to set those up. And again, we have those systems in place. We have and you can be assured we have an accounting firm that does all of our books, and we're audited every year so that you can feel very comfortable in that information. And if you would like to, if you want to do scholarships and you want to help be on the selection committee that helps, choose the recipients, we're happy to help you do that as well.
Excellent. And you just covered all the stuff that I was going to say. Tell us how to contact you. You did that beautifully. It's not like it's your first rodeo. And again, I thank you for the work that you do. I thank everybody, because it's not just you. It's a big staff. And of course, the donors make this happen. And of course, to the students that are helping each other and trying to do what they can to build a better future. And I am just honored and delighted to be part of that. And Kevin, thank you so much for being on the Phil Ferguson Show.
As always, my pleasure, and a big thank you to you, Phil, and your wife. You've given the time and the blood and the sweat of being part of the organization, so you know how important it is, and you know how amazing I think our student leaders are across the country. And you have been a supporter, so that is always appreciated. So thank you very much.
You're still here. I'm delighted. I know it's kind of a long show. I have this vision in my head that the shows will be about 60 minutes long, and here we are in a show that's probably close to an hour and a half. So I'm going to wrap up here pretty quickly. Fun little mini update on my solar panels. The way the company that I hired did this, and I will be able to give their name after they're done and make me really happy. But they do this little bridge loan thing because there's certain rebates and allowances you get from the government, the federal government and state government, but they come after the system's put in. So theoretically, you have to have a lot of money out front, and they give you a bridge loan, same as cash bridge loan, allegedly no cost to you. But then I asked them, I said, well, if I don't have that bridge loan, if I just pay for the shit that you're installing, is there a change in the price? And apparently it got reduced by $700. So the loan that appeared free was apparently costing me about $700. So it's a weird thing for regular listeners to think, I'm not going to use the loan, I'm going to pay cash. And partly because the loan had to be paid back in 12 months anyway. So what am I going to do with money for 12 years? This is not like a home or a car loan where I can invest the money for 7 years or 30 years. This is expected to be a one-time event. I don't think I'm going to be ever buying solar panels again unless I move, which could happen because most people, including me, think that you're never going to move but about every 5 years I have. So we'll see what the future holds. But I'm just going to pay for it, save the $700 because interest rates are so low now that what am I going to do with the money? I mean, I'm going to keep it aside knowing that I have to pay this. So I'm not really going to invest it in the long run. So I just took another $700 off of the price. So I'm going to be out about net around $12,000 for a solar powered system that could pay for itself in 6 years. And then, of course, I get to keep the panels. So it's going to work out, and kind of feel like I'm doing the right thing for the world and the environment. So that's nice too. Anyway, wrapping up here, my guest for next week, I have not scheduled a time yet. So hopefully that works out here in the next few days. And by next week, you won't be any the wiser. But I do appreciate you listening to the show. If you like the show, go to Apple Podcast or Stitcher and leave a 5-star review. I greatly appreciate that. Or join the growing number of people that are going to patreon.com/Phil and contributing to the show. It just kind of offsets a little bit of my expenses and my time for doing the show. And it's a way to say, thank you, Phil. I've got some value out of your plan, and it's helped me make money. That's the coolest thing ever. So, again, I thank you for listening, and I hope to see you out there sometime soon. Until then, ciao.